Welcome friends to another r/malicious compliance video. If you want to make a difference today, all you gotta do is hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. That said, our first story of the day is by Jupacabra, denied a raise and moved to overnight position and told, "Don't care how you do your job, just do it?" Okay, I will. I used to work in hotels in a ski town in Colorado. Very expensive, but the quality of life. Very common saying there. I had started at a new hotel and was making $10 an hour living with my brother in a 2-bedroom place that was 700 square feet. Rent was half our income. When the slow season approached, I was told I would have to move to night audit, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., or risk being let go. The problem was I lived 3 miles from the hotel and took the bus to get there since I couldn't afford a car. The bus didn't run at night or early mornings, so I would be walking 6 miles a day and several inches to a foot or more in snow, so I asked for a raise. They said they'd get back to me, but they need an answer, and I need the job, so okay, I'll work night audit. I start the next week as an auditor, and while I'm being trained, I learn that I'm also losing a day. The other auditor works 3 days, and I'll be working 4 days, not 5. That's $320 a month hit to my income before taxes. So I'll need to be making $12.50 an hour to keep making the same thing with the cut hours. But I decide I'm going to ask for 14. I complete training and meet with my GM. He asks me how I'm liking it, and I start off with my concerns. I tell them I wasn't told I'd lose a day, and with having to walk 6 miles a day in the snow, I was going to need a raise to $14 an hour. He let out an audible sigh and tells me he can easily hire someone for this position for $10 an hour and to take it or leave it. I knew it would be very hard to find a job in the winter when everything closes up, so I stayed. As I walked out of his office, he says, "I don't care how you do your job, just do it." Okay, I will. You see, this job was easy. It was 7 hours of me doing absolutely nothing and 1 hour of actual work, which gave me plenty of time to find shortcuts. The software we used allowed us to import scripts that you downloaded from the developer's site. One such script was a way to make my job literally one click. The problem was it was $500 a year license for it. Obviously, I wouldn't propose to my GM a way to eliminate my job, but there was a free trial on every script for 7 days. I remember at the time, you get around paywalls on news websites by going into the web console and simply removing the paywall from the source code. I decided to see if this was something I could do with this script. And what do you know? I downloaded it and opened the script in a text editor, and the only thing making the script a trial was a line that said, "License expiring," and I had the date said 7 days out from when I downloaded it. I changed the computer's date to 8 days from now and tried to run the script in our software and got a notification that said the free trial had ended. So I changed it back and set the expiration date to 2050. This took my manual job of 1 hour and made it 3 to 5 minutes. All I had to do was specify a date range and check it off what reports I wanted done and print it and click start. That was it. I always manually reviewed everything just in case. But that wasn't it. We had a kitchen where we made breakfast and dinner for the guests. Evening shift got free dinner and morning shift got free breakfast. I didn't get anything. They eventually decided to have the auditors set up breakfast so the kitchen crew didn't have to come in as early. I asked if we got free breakfast and was told no, despite setting up everything to make their jobs easier. I should also note that we had to clean any dishes left from dinner that the kitchen didn't get to, despite not even getting any dinner. But I had the kitchen all to myself for 6 hours, so I started making myself dinner around 1 a.m., whatever I wanted. The only limits were the ingredients in the kitchen, and since I was responsible for dishes from other shifts, I never left any evidence behind. I no longer had to buy food to bring to work. I later realized that I could put dirty dishes back in the return bin since it was covered, and the breakfast crew never checked to see if any dirty dishes were in it. And the very few times they did check, they assumed dinner forgot to check before leaving. I always cleaned up the dishes I used making myself food out of fairness though. So now my job no longer requires me to do dishes. I get free food, and all I have to do is remember the date and click a button to do my actual job. What am I to do with all this time? I watched so many shows. I played online games on my laptop. I started learning Spanish. The GM did say he didn't care how I did my job, just do it. And so I did. I did eventually decide to move away for a much better job far away and had to give up the comfy life. I trained my replacement the way I was doing things, including the script, and didn't teach him the manual way. Before I left though, I decided to change the trial date to 1 week out. 2 days after my last day, the front desk manager texts me and tells me that the other auditor was just fired for making racist remarks to a guest, and that guest recorded him, so he was fired once the GM got in. He asked if I would come back until they got someone else and said they'd pay me $15 an hour. Unfortunately, I was leaving in 2 days, so there was no way. I got a call from the GM at about 5 a.m. the day of the expiration, and he asked about this free trial thing and why wasn't the new guy trained how to do the audit properly, who was apparently working 7 days a week since no one else knew the audit except the new guy and, of course, me. I reminded him that he told me that he didn't care how I did my job, just do it, so I did exactly that. I could tell he wanted to yell, but he held back. He then demanded I come back and fix it, or he'll have to take legal action. I told him I was already at my new place 2,000 miles away, but I would happily do it for airfare, a free room, free meals while I'm there, and $10,000. That was when he lost it and I hung up. He texted me after saying he was contacting the lawyers and that I messed up and prepare to face the consequences. That was 5 years ago, and I haven't heard anything from him since. I did eventually go back to that town a few months ago to see my mom and ran into the front desk manager from that place, who's really a nice guy. He told me the GM was caught doing it with the head housekeeper in his office by his wife one day, later divorced him. The 19-year-old girl working the front desk in the mornings later filed sexual harassment charges against him, and he resigned after that. The assistant general manager jumped ship after that. The general manager was also a coach for a baseball team and hit a kid with a metal bat, breaking his arm, and got his crap kicked in by the dad. Not sure what happened to him after that. The front desk manager now runs the place as GM, and he's made sure that he, the assistant general manager, and the front desk manager are all trained to do the audit. If you worked at a job that treated you this badly, if they were asking you to train your replacement, would you maybe skip some steps or give them only the very basics? Or despite the circumstances, would you give in and teach them all the nooks and crannies and the ropes? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by Hero911, Chemist Malicious Compliance. So this was my first job after university. I got my bachelor's degree in chemistry and was lucky to find a position in my field right off the start. The pay was substandard, but it was required to put something on my resume. Since I was a new graduate, they thought that I was not going to be any real help to them. They said that I'll be just doing some analytical work, and if I had time for it, there was some research and development on a new compound they were working on. It was a very strong biocide, but the papers done on it only yielded around 25% efficiency, which made it not feasible to be used on large scale. I was the only chemist who worked in the lab, and the company was very top-heavy. Lots of managers. Once I had the analytical/synthesis work they wanted me to do worked out, I wanted to work on the R&D project to be able to put something significant on my resume. I read all the public research papers on the compound and worked pretty hard testing out different methods to increase the yields. I had tried everything from combining the different known methods of making the compound to adjusting the quantity of chemicals with no significant improvement. After about 6 months, I had a poof moment and instead changed the rate of addition of one of the compounds, and after some work, got the yields up to above 95%, using a method which could be done in large scale. The company was ecstatic, made a press release about the new product, and started looking at FDA approvals, etc. We also needed to patent the new method. The company decided to hire a PhD chemist who would give the patent and FDA approvals more merit. As I only had a BSc, which is honestly seen as very incredible in the science world, I didn't mind. After a while, this person became my manager. I had really liked the manager I had before and was hoping that this person would be good to work with too. With her experience in X-ray diffraction, I was also hoping to get to know more about that as well. The thing is that I had worked on this compound for so long that I had read a ton of literature around it. In addition to that, I had done a ton of experiments from start to finish, from procedure to write-up, and had a solid grasp of what I was doing. The first meeting was about the direction we wanted to move forward, and had the CEO and all the managers in on it. The CEO had asked the PhD chemist a question on what would be a good direction to move forward. She responded with an opinion which lacked information from a few papers I had read. In a very polite way, I had said, in paper, they discussed this and said it wouldn't be possible to do. Then suggested what I would do to go forward. The CEO liked my plan, I wasn't trying to whip myself out, but did not want to waste months doing research which would not get us forward. After writing that, I was going to say it was a big mistake, but I'm now thinking it's more appropriate to say it was a significant learning experience for testing the water to see if someone can't handle being wrong. After this, I got to see a whole new side of her. Any tiny thing she thought I did wrong would go into this notebook. It came time for my performance review. Most people who worked in the lab had roughly half a page of items which needed to be discussed. I had 8 full pages. It was a joke. I recall this one adventure where we ran out of DI water, so we had to get water from the university. When I got into her car, the tape cassette started playing, "You must listen to your husband, as listening to them will make them feel like you care." She was embarrassed, but I felt so incredibly bad for the person who she married after seeing how she handles relationships. Anyway, on to the defiance. With my knowledge about the compound, she still wanted me to write the procedures and carry them out. I would briefly discuss what we wanted to achieve, and most of the time she agreed. The thing about science is that you don't know if things will work. I guess if we did, we wouldn't have to do experiments. So this experiment has completely unexpected results about halfway through it, and I changed the procedure to try to get the best information we can out of the time we put into it. The next day I show the report to the PhD, and she gets pissed. She says, "You did not follow the procedure which I approved. You are being insubordinate and I'm going to report you." Her next steps were to the CEO, to which I'm asked to go have a chat with about 30 minutes later. He says that I have to follow her directions no matter what. I'm like, alright, won't happen again, and just bided my time for the exact same thing to happen. A few weeks later, we purchased a bunch of equipment to make a very large-scale synthesis of this chemical. The ingredients were about $2,000 alone. I wrote the synthesis according to our previous experiments and she signed off on it. The synthesis would take 12 hours, so I was there for a pretty long day. Needless to say, something didn't go as planned about halfway through. Something which would have been easily correctable. I was like, nope, I'm going to follow the procedure no matter what. And absolutely nothing made sense for what I was doing. I was just throwing chemicals randomly at this point with no rhyme or reason. Surely enough, the next day rolls around and she asks how it went. I responded, "Well, I'm happy to say that I follow the procedure to a T." She says, "Great, where's the product?" To which point I point at this black blob of a mess. The product is red crystalline. She goes ballistic. Her face goes red and she yells, "Why didn't you just correct the procedure?" I responded, "You remember the chat I had with the CEO? I'm just going to follow the procedure from now on." She blew up. It was wonderful. I just sat there with the smuggest look on my face. So at this point I was looking for another job as there was no room to move up and the pay was garbage. I found a great job which paid 3 times what I was making there and was happy to quit. Don't you just love that OP went and did what was right to save the product, and they got yelled at and reprimanded and scolded for not following the project to a T, even though the results were great? If you're a basketball coach and you tell your player to shoot a certain way, but they just completely disregard that and adjust it and shoot a completely different way, but the shot keeps going in, you would be wise not to go, "Hey, you're supposed to shoot exactly the way I told you." You would probably go, "Wow, you keep making it, keep doing it that way." And our final story of the day is by Midnight Ashley. You want more proof of COVID than a test? Alright. At the end of September, everyone in my household got COVID and I almost went to the hospital. Asthma plus COVID is a nightmare. I sent my work the test result straight from my doctor as soon as it came in. The next day, with some back and forth with my work, we figured out my quarantine time and leave of absence. Given my role as a para in special education, being gone that long is a big toll, especially since there's almost no subs and I get tapped to sub due to my licensure. I needed to be back in as soon as possible. I went back after I was no longer infectious and struggled through the first week because I was out of breath, but I pushed through. Then I got worse again, so an urgent care doctor wrote me out for a few days and put me on antibiotics because of my symptoms. This weekend, I got an email from HR saying, long story short, they were questioning my COVID leave and I needed to get checked by my doctor and have them verify that I did indeed have COVID, or they would rescind their approval of my leave of absence and possibly terminate me. I had 5 days to comply. Now, that confused the heck out of me, so I spent the last few days playing phone tag to be told to get a signed form of verification of illness from my doctor, even though they told me I was good weeks ago because they had my positive COVID test. With how busy doctors are, their turnaround time for forms is 7 to 10 business days, which meant I had to make an appointment and see my doctor in order to submit the form within 5 days. Today I went to my appointment. My vitals were not great and my lungs still sound bad. My doctor filled the form stating that she could verify that I had COVID per testing positive and having seen me herself when I was ill. Additionally, the form also asked her to clear me to return to work with no restrictions. She decided that per my ongoing symptoms, I would need to be put on light duty for an entire month starting now. No walking long distances, no stairs, heck, she even told me to lay off exercising. Not only did I have COVID, I'm not healed from it entirely and need to continue recovery. As work needed the form filled out to confirm my illness and abilities, she answered it truthfully and wrote restrictions through Thanksgiving. I can't wait to call HR tomorrow and give them the verification form filled to their specifications, including my new restrictions. Considering 70% of my job is doing physically demanding things, and I'm even regularly pulled to sub because of my licensure, they will now be down a para and a sub as I can't do either. This in a year with a huge staff shortage and almost no subs. Light duty at my work means basically sitting in an office and making copies occasionally. I might even cut some paper once in a while if I'm lucky. It'll be very chill, and I look forward to it after how stressful the school year has been thus far. For a lot of people, the recovery from COVID is rough and not something I envy because it really can mess up your lungs. I've heard of cases of people taking like a year to fully recover back their breathing without needing like an inhaler. There was a basketball player who was in great shape who caught COVID, and even they had to use an inhaler before games or even during games for a series of months. It's pretty darn serious, so take care out there. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So of all these stories I've read today, which is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Whatever you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, all of it helps grow this channel and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.